Hi, I'm Erika of Grapefruit and Gardenia Designs and the Knit Kind podcast. I have tried a few times to record this podcast with various challenges from landscaping to construction in the neighborhood. So bear with me. I hope this is going to be the one. And you can find me on Ravelry as NittyElf40, where you can find detailed notes about most of the projects I'm going to talk about today. I am wearing the Reyna shawl by Noora Backlund, and it is a free pattern in Ravelry. I knitted in Malabrigo sock yarn in the colorway Diana, and I think the only modification that I made to the pattern was to do a picot bind off edge. So that's these little nubs that are hard to see here without a white background or a solid background, but the picot edge along the shawl. It's a simple one skein shawl that is alternating patterns of garter stitch and lace. It's very wearable, very comfortable, and perfect for these transition months that we have here in Massachusetts and the Northeast. So I wanted to talk about a couple of things today. One is a little bit more on Ravelry Searches. I know we talk about Ravelry Searches and a lot of the different topics that I discuss. And also bulky weight sweaters or bulky weight yarn in general. And some tips I have with the season coming up when people like to do quick knit gifts, maybe some quicker knit things for themselves, and some of the things that I love about certain bulky yarn. My earrings are getting stuck and I can see it. But first, let's look at my finished objects and my whips. So I had shown you before these Chili Podster fingerless mitts that I made in So Happy Jane organic DK yarn, merino, with the little flip top here, the flip top here, and the individual fingers. I had so much yarn left over that you might remember I showed you I was going to make a hat. And I did start a somewhat impromptu improvised hat with the Tin Can Knit Marine pattern of snowflakes. And although I usually like low contrast, it was too low contrast to the point, I don't want to call it sloppy, but it didn't read in the hat. So I ripped the hat back, I took out the snowflakes, and I did a simple stripe. And if you can see in the sunlight here, let me see, there's maybe the best place to see it. I put the sparkles in that we had talked about. So I hadn't really done much on this trend, but you can see as it moves, the little sparkles throughout. And I don't know if there's a great way to do this. Maybe people who knit with more sequins can tell me. But I ended up with so many on the inside too. I almost wish I could make them pop through, but I can't. This was a very improvised pattern. In the end, it was a little bit big, but I like it because I can wear it over a ponytail and just kind of have it on one of the days I want a slouchier hat. So anyway, I don't often gauge swatch for hats, a little confession, but I'm willing to rip them out if they don't fit. A hat is really your most accurate gauge, because by the time if you're really going to do a 6-inch swatch, you might as well just start knitting the hat, in my opinion. And I'm usually pretty consistent. So I do think my gauge is changing a little bit lately, but like I said, I don't mind this one being a little bit big and just kind of it's very soft. I held the Lang mohair with sequins. I can't remember exactly what it's called. Luxe, maybe. I held that double with the So Happy Jane organic DK. And I started doing it, I think, in both colorways, and then I ended up just holding it with one of the striped colors. So that was my exploration into sequins. I'm glad I tried it. I don't think I have the sequin bug quite as much as most people, but I like to try things and just see what's different. So that's my finished object. My whip is coming along in these beautiful fall colors. And I actually did a partial block, so you will notice that this area up top, the stitches are relaxed and smooth, and down here is unblocked. So what is this? This is a Casapinka design. It is called All Points South. She will stress that it's not a poncho. For those of us who don't have teenagers in the house making fun of ponchos, that's sort of what it's like. A big over-the-shoulder cowl, shawl, non-poncho. It is similar to one I've shown before called the Magical Thinking Shawl, which was a pattern that was done for local yarn store day. This one is a similar shape. The dimensions, I believe, overall are a little bit bigger, a little bit wider along the bottom and longer. I am knitting this in a few new to me yarns. The Good Karma Farm Sport Walkin on Sunshine, which I love the name of, and that was gifted to me from a friend's D-stash. The Campfire Knits Hearth, and that's my variegated here. It's an MCN, and that is in the colorway Mary. That is a local dyer, independent dyer in Massachusetts. And then I'm going to mix this up a little bit. I started with a Dream in Color Smooshy, and that's going to repeat again in a larger block next after I finish this larger block of Mary. I am going to mix it up a little bit with a Wonderland Yarns Mad Hatter in a very similar colorway, and Molly Girl baseline in this really pretty chocolatey brown color, and I think it will all go together nicely. I don't think you're even really going to notice the difference between those two. And then this will come into play, possibly. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But the nice part of those Casapinka designs is they come with charts where you can play with your colors and see how it's going to look. And there are always so many examples of finished objects where you can look at colorways and fit and see what is best for you. So I am knitting the smaller of the two sizes in this one. When I did Magical Thinking Shawl, I knitted the larger one. And I think they're both going to fit great. So what else did I want to talk about today? I mentioned the Ravelry Searches and bulky yarn. I love working in every weight yarn now, and if I could knit them all just as fast, I probably, let's see, I don't know what my go-to would be. Maybe even a sport weight now. It was definitely bulky when I first started because I wanted projects and I wanted to get experience and gratification. And I still love bulky yarn, especially in the winter when it's warm or when it's warm, it's cold, but the yarn is warm. But as our climate changes too, if I could have more things that are in lighter weight, that's not true. I have knit a fingering weight sweater, but at a larger, looser gauge or held with mohair. And I've knit a sport weight in the Lace and Fade Boxy. But most sweaters I've knitted have been in either DK or worsted. I've knitted one I think in bulky and a couple in Aran. So bulky weight, that's what I'm getting at. What do I look for in bulky weight? A few things, and some of them can be hard to find. So the yarn choice, if I'm going to make a garment, this is specific to garments now, I look for 3 plies or more, a tighter twist, and those are the things I look for most to minimize pilling, because there are a lot of beautiful bulky weight yarns that are wonderful for accessories that maybe some of us have made sweaters in, and they pill like crazy because they're so soft. They're not necessarily tightly twisted. Often they're 2 plies, sometimes they're 1 ply. I know everybody has opinions about this, but I'm going to give you mine, and you can decide if that is something that's helpful to you. So this bulky yarn, I talk about it often, So Happy Jane yarn, independent dyer out of Idaho, and this is a shawl that I made in her bulky weight yarn, and I just want to show you up close what those stitches look like. And the reason I'm showing you that is because I have worn this and I could go like this. And the pilling is really, really minimal. And that's because it is, I believe, this is a 3 ply. It's a scrumptious bulky. She has used a couple of different bases over the years, but that 3-ply one, or if there's one with more than 3 plies, those are my favorites. They give nice stitch definition. You can knit them to a looser or a tighter gauge, and if you're knitting it to a tighter gauge, that also will most likely minimize the pilling. The gauges that I tend to look for are ones that almost are bulky Aran gray area sometimes. So if you look at yarns and you do your swatches, there are going to be some yarns that are light bulky. You know, we always see light worsted or heavy DK, and they're interchangeable. And the Aran bulky sometimes can be like that too. So if I sort of look at that sweet spot as 15 stitches per 4 inches or 10 centimeters, or the range of 14 to 16. Once you get down to 12 or fewer stitches, it's still fine and might make a beautiful sweater, but that is where it starts to tip a little bit for me of not being in the sweet spot that I'm describing. So I actually want to show you as it's related. Let's see if I can pull this up. Searches in Ravelry. So if you are in your Ravelry profile and you go to the search tab, see if I can get it to work. What I actually have is saved searches. But if you don't have saved searches yet, you can see this filter your search. And these are all advanced search functions that you can use in Ravelry to find patterns that meet what you're looking for. That might be as simple as top-down raglan or bulky weight hats, but you can filter in here in so many other ways. I think we talked once about finding local designers within 50 miles of you. That is something you can do in Ravelry. And once you set up searches, you can save those searches. So, I'm hoping it does this. When I click on the search tab here, you'll see this additional menu come up underneath, and right here is saved searches. So if I click on Save Searches, what you'll see come up for me is this whole list of saved searches. And if it has a little green dot, that means I've subscribed to updates. And what that means is every time a new pattern comes in that meets that criteria, it will flag for me and say, new pattern in your saved searches. And one of the things I save them for is if I'm looking for a project for a certain yarn and I haven't found exactly what I want, but there's some things that maybe I would knit and I'm just not sure, I'll put that in there, and then something might pop up and I find out there's a new pattern that's out and it's exactly what I want for that yarn that I've been waiting to use. Or I might be designing something and I want to know what else is out there, because sometimes my design process is quicker for me. Sometimes, very rarely, but I might have something designed in less than a month and then it's in testing and so on. And I'm always looking to try to make sure I'm not duplicating exactly what else is out there. I'm not naming something the same thing that someone else is naming at the same time. I have missed a couple of these. Sometimes I've had things happen I'm not quite sure how they have. And sometimes I think there's just something in the air. But one of the things is, if you've watched my podcast, you know that I've been working on a vest for a very long time now. And vests have become super trendy. And so I have a little search in here that tells me about some of the vest searches I'm looking for, because it's quite possible that there's going to be things that look like my vest by the time I do have it come out, or that are named the same thing. And those are decisions we have to make as designers, as whether we're going to continue to move forward in the process. It might depend how much investment of time and money or other resources we've already put into a design, but I think it's good to be aware. So what I am showing here is I have one called 5-star bulky sweaters. Well, what is 5-star? That is at the end of a pattern, when you have a chance to rate the pattern and rate the yarn. I am looking here for what are those patterns that are being knitted by enough people to be giving rankings of 5 stars. Those are the ones that are going to rise above. I don't save that for everything. Sometimes I will knit a pattern no one else has knitted. I don't think that should limit what you're doing. But let's say you have bought a precious sweater quantity of yarn and it's bulky weight and you've spent a couple $100. Maybe you don't want to be the first person to knit a new design by someone who has no other designs and has had no one knit that pattern. There's obviously a whole range of what you can do there, but I specifically for this search saved 5-star bulky sweaters. And I also have one on here, which is a good reminder to me, Christmas stockings. I do want to do a special podcast around Christmas stockings this season. And then just to give you an example of 2 other things I've searched on and maybe inspire you to save some searches, I have a search for 17 stitch gauge for fingering. I was looking at things where I didn't want to just see patterns in fingering weight, and I didn't want to just see 17 stitches in 4 inches or 10 centimeters. I wanted to see both. So I put that in. There's other criteria. It's just, that's what I named it so I would remember what it was. And I have one for modular cowls, because as I was, and I have a design that I haven't published yet, but I did design over the summer, knit up and write up, and it is a modular cowl construction. So similarly, I wanted to see what else is already out there, what can I learn from, what if I am doing something similar to other people, do I know? So a little Ravelry lesson while we're in there. I'm going to now pop into that 5-star bulky sweater search, and you'll see that here there are 1,177 results. It shows you my criteria. So I wanted sweater, knitting, with a photo, in English, rated 5 stars for bulky weight. What I didn't put in here is the stitch gauge. But when I made my list of sweaters that I was considering most and saving them in my favorites, or if I really wanted to knit them, saving them in my Ravelry queue, it turned out most of them were in that range. And I think that was largely because of the look I was going for. And as I looked through, those are the ones that called my attention. So I thought I would give you a few examples today of ones that really caught my eye. Whether or not I will knit them, I'm not sure. I hopefully will knit one, or I might decide to design my own, because I have some thoughts about that too. And I do have a beautiful sweater quantity of bulky weight yarn, and I'm just trying to decide whether to follow someone else's pattern or make my own on this one. So one that really stopped me in my tracks was called Ausable. I hope I don't have that wrong, but I very well may. It's by Amy Christoffers. It's spelled Ausable. It is a free pattern from Knitty 2018 and is sized from a 40.75 to 66.5 inch bust. So I will pull that up for you if it does it quickly and show you here, rather than having to edit the whole video and put in stills, which I've been trying to do more of, but I want to get this video out and it will be faster if I don't have to do that. So here is the one that really caught my eye. I like that at first glance, you don't look at this and think bulky sweater. I look at it and I think warm sweater. I don't think fingering weight sweater. I think cozy, but you can see that it also seems very versatile. So it is a 15 stitch gauge and 22 rows, and that is in moss stitch specifically. The suggested yarn is discontinued. It was a Barocco Katina yarn. It was 120 yards for 50 grams and chainette plied, which probably when I said 120 yards and 50 grams, it didn't sound bulky weight to you, because that would be about 240 yards and 100 grams. But the chainette ply means, and it's 94% merino wool, 6% nylon, that has more air to it. So it's a much lighter weight yarn, which also factors in most likely to the gauge and the fabric created as well as I mentioned, it didn't look like a very heavy yarn. So for comparison, this yarn, which is beautiful and I would knit a sweater in, this is about, I can't remember if it's 108 yards or 120 yards, but it's in that range per 100 or 100 plus gram skein. So this one is about half of that. So that is Ausable, I hope, by Amy Christoffers. Other ones that, and also just to be clear, I'm not endorsing these patterns. I haven't knitted them, but they are by well-known designers who go through the process of tech editing and test knitting, and they are, as I said in here, they're 5 stars, and they're also have been knitted and have many projects, and so you can read the comments and so on. So let's see. The next, I made 2 lists. I made a list of cardigans and a list of pullovers. The list of cardigans is Home Cardigan by Kaidri, I think also. I'm sorry if I think everyone who does these podcasts, even though we try, sometimes we're repeating either how we've heard things pronounced or we're hoping that we get it right, but usually we put links in the show notes so that if we get it wrong, we apologize, but you can still find it. So this is Home Cardigan, and that's this one here. I also have 2, the Carbeth and Carpbeth. I believe that she did both, and she has both pullovers and cardigans. So let me pull up one. I don't think I need to pull up all of them. Oops. Okay. Actually, it's maybe going to, this is nice. It's just going to pull them up. So this is Kate Davies Designs. The Carbeth cardigan is here. Many of these are ones you've probably seen before if this is up your alley, but if bulky sweater knitting isn't up your alley, maybe I'll be showing you a few new ones. So that's the Carbeth cardigan, and this is the Carbeth pullover. And then there is the Carpbeth, and that one has texture down the arms. So very similar, the design itself. I don't know if because of the texture it might change the stitch count, but it's essentially, here they are side by side. One that has the stockinette sleeves and one that has the texture. So that series. There is the Deep Winter Coat by Woolen Pine. I want to say this one came out last year. Let's see, December 2022. Here's a detail in the back. This one is, as it says, much more of a, maybe you'd think of as a coat than a sweater, but it's heavy texture and cables. I don't know if there's a picture that shows the length, but obviously you can, here's one that shows it's quite long with a belt. And then the last cardigan I had on the list was Noora, N-E-R-A, and that is also by Amy Christoffers. And that one is another that was done in Barocco here. And it's got the 3/4 length sleeves and let's see, a 16 stitch gauge. So again, that really starts to push more toward Aran weight for me. One other thing I don't know if I mentioned was when you're looking for that 3-ply yarn in the bulky weight, they are very hard, I think, to find by independent dyers. I have found a few that are in sort of that space in between Koigu, K-O-I-G-U, am I spelling that right? I think people don't think of them as like a small independent dyer, but they are still a hand dyer, and they just work on a larger scale. They have one, I believe it's called Chelsea, that I have a couple skeins of, and I'm going to practice with some swatches and see, but I haven't knitted a full garment or accessory in that. And I found a few others by some local, very small vendors who are not online, but I would say that that is a sweet spot that can be hard to find if this is your jam. There are more mass manufactured bulkies, but not necessarily that independent dyer look. So this is Barocco Estiva, also discontinued. It is a cotton yarn, and it has that like tape-like construction look to it, or ribbon-like construction, maybe some people want to call it. So these are certainly yarns that you will want to swatch before you make a decision here, because knitting this sweater in a bulky weight wool yarn is going to be very different than that yarn with the cotton and a different texture or consistency. It doesn't mean it can't be done, but it means you're going to create a different type of garment. So just keep that in mind as well. The other pullovers that I noted are one by Tiff Nealon, who I've mentioned before. It's at a 14 stitch gauge, and it is called the watercolor pullover. If you are venturing into color work sweaters and you want something, let me see, watercolor pullover, that's going to go faster and let you start to experience color work without jumping into a full yoke sweater if that intimidates you, this is a great one to try because of the bulky weight yarn. So you have your yoke sweater here, but it is obviously a lot faster to knit a bulky weight sweater. Now, saying that, this does look more like a bulky weight sweater. And the yarn that this was done in, it is a lavender Luna yarn, superwash merino cashmere nylon, and a decay. And it says they're both used. So she used 2 strands of DK to make a bulky. So that's also something that's interesting. It has a nice little detail on the sleeve here, which again, you can do or you can omit. That's up to you. But this is a great way to play with color work in a bulky weight sweater. And 2 more to wrap it up. One is called Dartmoor, also by Kydri. And I think we'll be just about at our half an hour. So, oh, it looks like, okay, I think I was going for the V-neck one. It looks like there's 2 different versions. This is the V-neck, which I really think that plunging V-neck is beautiful in a bulky weight sweater and a little bit unexpected. You could wear a tank or a camisole underneath it. And then the last one is Creme d'Yvette by Thea Coleman. It's a little bit of a raglan. It's got some texture at the bottom, and it looks like it is reverse stockinette for the body. So those are a few that I thought I'd share. If you have the bug to knit something bulky going into winter or for a quick gift, I think that I covered everything I wanted to say here. I just wanted to make sure. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you do something kind for someone today. As you know, the premise of this podcast is knitting kindly and living kindly. We need more of that in the world every day. It's clear. So maybe grab yourself some bulky yarn and make somebody who could use a pick-me-up a gift. Knit some love into every stitch. Don't wait for the holidays. Life is long, life is short, however you want to look at it. But every day is a gift, and I hope that today feels like a gift to you and that this gave you a little pick-me-up today. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, like and subscribe. It will help me. It will help me find other people who enjoy this podcast and create a kinder knitting community.